Anthony Grassi for D2 Ticker here at the Women Leaders in Sports National Convention. Happy to sit down for another small college conversation with Erika Wallace, Director of Athletics at Wayne State University. Erika, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start, I want to start with the leadership transition you've had. I'm always curious, people that are sitting in an interim chair and then transition into the permanent role.
Yeah.
Walk me through kind of how you approached sitting in the interim chair and how maybe that prepared you best and what maybe you intentionally did in that seat to prepare you for the permanent job.
Yeah. Well, I was lucky enough to have a president who really supported me. So I think that was kind of the first step to help me with the transition. When I was approached to be the interim, there was no question in my mind that I wanted it. So I knew I wanted to be an athletic director. I didn't know when that time was going to come. Probably came a little sooner than what I was expecting. But I was really ready and excited because I had been at Wayne State for 3 years. So I didn't have to get used to a new organization or get to know the people or build relationships because I'd already done that and been doing it for 3 years. Yeah. So for me, taking over the interim role, my president at the time had said to me, I'm giving you this interim title, but this is your chance to prove that you can be an athletic director. So I really don't want you to hold anything back. And so by him giving me kind of that green light that I'm not like this temporary person that now and then we're going to go find our athletic director, really gave me the confidence to kind of sit in that seat and immediately say, okay, what do we need to change? Where can we get better? What's working well? And really start to evaluate things. So to be honest, I really took on the interim role as I was sitting in the seat. And he supported me through some of the changes that I had to make pretty quickly. And in doing that, I think it really just helped kind of streamline that process for eventually being named the athletic director.
Yeah, a green light, I imagine, gives you a lot of ease, or maybe
100%.
Allows you to take a deep breath and say, hey, all right, we can go
like I'm not
forward
just
with the vision.
sitting here, right?
Yeah.
I'm not just sitting here waiting for them to decide.
I'm not keeping the seat warm.
Correct.
I'm doing something.
I'm doing something.
How did you, was there anything different that maybe changed about the relationship you had with your staff, your coaches, the people across campus maybe, as you were transitioning from your previous role to interim to AD?
I mean, change for sure. I think it was, I was a chief of staff before, so I was in a leadership role within the athletic department. But, now it was me communicating the decisions that we were going to make and why we were making them. But I think with the staff, I had already built such strong relationships with coaches and administrators that once again, it just kind of felt right. I will say with administration across campus, maybe a little different because I was not involved in those meetings as the chief of staff. So me walking into the room now, it was kind of like, oh, we don't really know who this person is. She hasn't been involved much on the administrative side at the university. Does she know what she's talking about? So I did have to prove myself a little bit once I got into that role and mainly just build those relationships with those people. Took a little bit of time, but once we got to know each other, then it was much better. But that was probably the biggest transition for me leadership-wise, was really with the rest of campus, not necessarily the athletic department.
I want to go back. Before you joined Wayne State, you were at Grand Valley.
Yeah.
You were a student athlete there. You won a national championship there. You were there for a decade and a half.
Yeah. That's a long time.
Yeah. Walk you through kind of the decision to leave.
Yeah.
The place where you grew up, developed into a leader.
Yeah.
And just kind of maybe figured out who you were as a professional.
Yeah, and figured out who I was as a person, to be honest with you, because that was my undergrad too. So, I got to Grand Valley as a 17-year-old girl, ready to play basketball and get a degree, and spent a lot of time there. Developed as a person, and I was able to work under Carrie Becker, who is a strong women leader of that department. And for me, I think it was just time, in the sense of that's all I knew. So I knew it was a great institution, obviously a dynamic athletic department, but also it was all that I knew. And so I kind of had this aspiration of, someday I do want to be an athletic director, and I feel like I need to go see how it's done other places, and really get out of that comfort zone, because I was very, very comfortable.
Yeah.
I worked in enrollment management prior to the athletic department, so I knew everyone on one side of the campus and the other side of campus. So it was very, very comfortable for me, and I was kind of getting to a point in my career where Carrie Becker had developed me, and she had sent me to conferences and really working underneath her and seeing how she worked, where it was a hard conversation to go in and say I think I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people were surprised, but it wasn't because anything happened there.
Right.
It was because I was ready for a change. And that change, came with the opportunity at Wayne State in a large city, Detroit, large enrollment. We have over 24,000 students. So it was at an institution where I felt like I could learn a lot.
There's obviously a lot going on at Wayne State.
Yeah.
We'll start with the facility. So you have recently completed $25 million renovation.
Yep.
Of your field house.
Yep. New build.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, yes. New 25. Yes. Yeah. $25 million. Nobody's renovating $25 million. What will be kind of the impact that facility has, and how are you thinking through using that facility to generate revenue?
Yeah. Tons, for one. So the neat thing with this facility is that we did it with a partnership with the Detroit Pistons. Mm-hmm. And that's what's so cool about Wayne State and our location and the connection that we have with the city and with the professional sports teams in the area. But so the Detroit Pistons were starting a new G League team, the Motor City Cruise. They needed a venue to play in. There wasn't a small seat arena in the city of Detroit. And so at that point in time, came together and started to talk about what this could look like. So really the Detroit Pistons helped us build this facility. From the day we stuck a bulldozer in the ground to dig that first dig, the Pistons were with us every step of the way, which was really nice because they had just had the experience of building their performance center downtown Detroit. So they had just basically opened the doors to that and had kind of gone through that whole construction phase. Mm-hmm. And so they were really able to help us with guidance on what we should do, what we shouldn't do, and were with us every step of the way. So that was kind of the number one partnership where, and it's still a great partnership today because all of their home games are played in our arena for the Motor City Cruise. Wayne State Athletics is actually in charge of renting and hosting all of their games. So it's this mixed collaboration of professional sports and college sports, and really cool for our basketball teams because, they're essentially sharing like the same training room as the Motor City Cruise players. And Detroit Pistons had an open practice in our facility last week. So we're right down the street. Mm-hmm. It's a really cool collaboration. But on top of that, like I said, there's not a facility in the city that holds 3,000, kind of like this intimate facility atmosphere. And so we do have a lot of opportunities for rentals. We brought in wrestling. We're bringing in TNA wrestling next weekend because we are right in the heart of the city. It is definitely a building that people want to use. Now, we can't forget that our basketball teams play there too. And so I have to remind people of that. We do have 2 basketball teams that play here. So scheduling can get a little tricky, but the need for it within the city and honestly just throughout the regional area has been very high. And so generating revenue is one of the things that we will do with the building.
One of the other big kind of Detroit, I guess we can call it, things that you guys have done is you've partnered with Illich Sports and Entertainment to help with some sponsorship and partner activations.
Yeah.
Walk me through the idea behind making that decision and what it means for a Division II athletic department.
It means a lot for a Division II athletic department because we just do not have the resources and staff to go out into Detroit in the market and spend time soliciting our corporate sponsors and people that want to be involved. And that just comes with the staffing model for Division II institutions. And so I really, I tell people I had like 0.5 of a person, and he's wonderful, but it was half of his job. Right. And so how can we expect him to generate all of these dollars when it's half of his position to do so? So we started kind of talking about what that looks like. I met some of the guys from Illage at a convention I was at and introduced myself and sat down with them at lunch and said, at that time I was interim, but and said, I'm the new interim athletic director at Wayne State. When we're right down the road. We're 1.2 miles from Little Caesars Arena. So they're like, we've never even been to Wayne State's athletic campus. I'm like, well, you should come out and we should. Yeah. So I think it was like 3 weeks later, they were on our campus. I was showing them around. They were all talking activations, like, why don't you do this and why don't you do this? And I was like, we would love to, but
these are all great ideas.
Great ideas, but who?
Right.
And so it just was a very natural cultivation between both of us as we started talking about it. And then we really started talking about, like, how can we partner and what does that look like? And, they're talking about a lot of their partners who have interest in collegiate sports and kind of like that grassroots athletic department within the city of Detroit. And so through that, we sat down and just talked about how they could help us and how we could help them, and with relationships they already had. They have a team of 12 to 15 that are out selling for the Red Wings and the Tigers. And they said, we have the ability to help you guys with the sponsorship sales as well. And so it has been a partnership where in order for us to do what they're doing for us, I would have had to hire probably 10 more people. And so that was kind of my way to sell it. Mm-hmm. And the revenue that's coming in, obviously we have a shared revenue model with them. So it is a win-win on both sides, right. But something that we weren't even touching because we didn't have the resources to do it. And so it has been an awesome collaboration. I'm really excited for this year to kind of see how it comes to life. But they have been kind of with us every step of the way and helping to walk us through things and understanding collegiate sports at the same time, right? Professional sports, collegiate sports, a little different, mm-hmm. But a lot of similarities as well. And so we're learning a lot from them. They're learning from us, and it's a great partnership that we have.
If you were to take kind of the partnership that you guys have and think about it more broadly across Division II small college athletics, mm-hmm. if you were the AD at X small college, is that the way you would? Do you think that this is the model that is kind of the optimal solution for mm-hmm. generating revenue from sponsorship for small college athletics?
Yeah, I don't see why not, because what are you bringing in right now? Or are you going to share some revenue with someone that actually understands your mission? I mean, that's going to be the key, is really making the relationships, sitting down with people so that they understand who you are. Wayne State has a long-time relationship with the Illage family. Our business school is named after mm-hmm. the Illage family. So there was already a relationship there, and they understood who we were as an institution. So that helped a lot. So I would just say, you want to make sure that you have the right partners on board in order to do it. But, I mean, for me, we're going to be bringing in revenue that we wouldn't be able to bring in because we just didn't have the capacity to do that, being a Division II athletic department and the staffing models that we have. So, it really was kind of a no-brainer at one point when we sat down and talked about the revenue we could bring in. And even with the split, it's still more than what we were bringing in.
It's more than half a person can generate.
Correct.
Right. One of the roles you're trying to fill as well is you're hiring a new assistant AD for mental health and wellness.
Yeah.
Which is not a common position across college athletics at large, mm-hmm. let alone Division II. Walk me through kind of the decision to make that, because this isn't a brand new position right now. Mm-hmm. The decision to add that position and what the impact it has had since you've kind of started that position.
Yeah. So that was one thing when I first took over as interim, reviewing and looking at kind of the big picture and looking at our budget, looking at our staffing model, restructuring things, and I did all of that. And in that restructure, I was able to figure out this new position. And the reason for that was, when I took over, we did a student-wide survey, a student-athlete-wide survey, and just trying to get the pulse of the athletic department. I felt like I knew it, but now as an athletic director, I wanted to see if I was on the right track,
or was formal results.
Correct.
Yes.
Or was I just thinking whatever I was thinking? And so through that survey, it was very much evident that we needed some help in the mental aspect. And so for me, it became a mission to try to figure that out. We have a counseling services office at Wayne State. Every institution does. Every institution is absolutely bombarded right now with the demand. Nobody can keep up. And so in talking about what that looked like, we started having conversations with our School of Social Work. And there was a master's degree, the LMSW, that certification that people go after. And it takes a long time in order to get that certification, and kind of bringing the social work world into the mental health within sports capacity. And so in those conversations, it became evident to me that maybe it wasn't a sports psychologist that we needed, it was a social worker. And a social worker that could sit down with our student athletes and really help them. But the main thing with that too was that if we had a social worker within our department, we could then become a practicum site for our School of Social Work, and we could get interns in, and we wouldn't have to pay for that. And so we went from having, once I hired the one person, we went from having 0 to 4 within 2 months, because we were able to bring in the practicum master students to get their hours in. And so that's the model that we're going with right now. We have 4, we need 10. I mean, that is just what happens. And so our student athletes have utilized the services. We're looking at, there's one-on-one counseling services, but then on top of that, we're doing group sessions and really having some advocates through SAC get some training so that they can go back to their programs and their teams and communicate that. But it has been, for me, just being able to watch our student athletes actually have a need, voice the need, and then for us to be able to really help with that has been super fulfilling. But at the same time, there's still so much more work to do in that area. And so we're just tapping the surface right now. But you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of, for me, it was one of my main priorities after getting that survey back from our students. Okay, forget the fueling station, forget the food. I mean, we like food.
Of course.
But clearly we need some help here in the mental health aspect.
Have you kind of redone that survey maybe and seen if there's a tangible, quantifiable, impact that move has had?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So I want to get out of here this last topic. You are, for this year, the chair of the Women's Basketball Committee.
Yes.
For Division II.
Yes.
Division II, from a championship selection process, is at least formally exploring move for selections to a KPI, NCAA Power Index, some version of that. As someone who sits in the seat that you do, what is your opinion on how maybe that is best executed for Division II, women's basketball, all sports?
Yeah.
How do you think about that?
So we've been looking at KPI for a couple of years now, and really just kind of looking at it not in a formal capacity, but we knew it was coming down the pipeline.
Right. Yeah.
So as we have been going through rankings for the last 2 years, we have been able to kind of pull up our teams, our regional teams, and compare it to what the KPIs were, and did that make sense based on how the teams ended up. And really, in the last 2 years, it has showed that it has supported almost 100% some decisions. And honestly, some decisions that we had made, we thought that maybe should have been flipped after the fact. The KPI supported that as well. So it was very interesting to kind of see that roll out, especially over this last year. So we are starting to use it this year. We're with the RPI as well, but looking at KPI and what that means for Division II is really nice because of our regionalization model.
Right.
So not everyone gets to play everyone. We don't have this national model where when we get to our Elite Eight teams, there's any crossover whatsoever. Maybe a game or two in preseason, but when we get to seeding our Elite Eight teams, we're really looking at teams that have never even played each other. Maybe some common opponents.
Right.
But because of regionalization, we force people to play people in their region so that they can hopefully get a good seeding when it comes to regionals. So they're doing what they're supposed to be doing,
Right.
but then once you make it to the Elite Eight, it's kind of like this, okay, now how do we seed them? So one of the things that we're going to be doing moving forward is for the Elite Eight seeding, we are using KPI only. And we're going to see just what that does. We're going to call it good because we have been looking at that metric so much. Division III has obviously been using it. So starting this year, the KPI will be used solely for our Elite Eight seeding.
How do you look at, because obviously Division III is this the first full academic year where they're using the NCAA Power Index to make the selections for postseason. Do you think that that's where Division II gets to using the NPI or maybe a different metric, maybe a combination of metrics, or maybe some tweaks to the dials of NPI, or do you view it as more of a support tool for the regional advisory committees as they make their selections?
Right now, at this point in time,
Yes.
I think of it as a support tool because there is a human element to things.
Okay.
But is the question,
Right.
I think. And I think that's where we're at as a committee right now. So we are digging in heavily to KPI this year to kind of see where it comes out based on the human element of reviewing scores. And at some point, if the KPI is accurate to everything that we're deciding from the human element, does it make sense to take all that time looking at all of the teams when eventually
You get the same result.
the result will be the same? So we're looking at that this year. So it's a support mechanism this year, 100%, and we'll see.
How much are you having conversations with your Division III peers or the national office staff that are assisting those committees as they're kind of going through this for the first time, having that be the selection process?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're watching them like a hawk.
Okay.
And we meet with them too. We meet with them. And so it will be very interesting after this year to be able to sit down and talk with them and kind of get their thoughts on how it went for them.
All right. A lot to look forward to, Erika.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me
Yeah.
today.
Thank you.